The royal family found itself at the center of two very different stories. While Prince William, Princess Catherine, and their children captured public attention with a warm and seemingly effortless appearance at the Commonwealth Games, Prince Harry was once again making headlines over reports that he hopes King Charles will stand beside him at the next Invictus Games. At the same time, Meghan Markle's latest public appearance has sparked fresh debate about whether she's rebuilding her image or simply reinforcing old criticisms. So, what do these stories really tell us about duty, family, and the future of the monarchy? And perhaps the biggest question of all, can trust ever be rebuilt once it's been broken? Let's take a closer look. Would you know it? Prince Louis steals the show again, while Prince Harry once more finds himself needing something from King Charles. On the surface, these are two completely different royal stories. One is warm, spontaneous, and filled with the kind of family moments that make people smile. The other is tense, strategic, and shadowed by years of public conflict. Yet, when these stories are placed side by side, they reveal the same central struggle: how the modern royal family manages duty, image, family loyalty, and the relentless pressure of being watched. The weekend appearance of the Prince and Princess of Wales with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis at the 2026 Commonwealth Games in Scotland offered a rare glimpse of the family together in an official public setting. The children were not simply attending a sporting event. They were stepping into what one commentator repeatedly called a goldfish bowl, an environment where every expression, every gesture, and every whispered comment can be photographed, analyzed, and turned into a headline. For Prince Louis, however, the weight of that attention appeared to disappear behind a huge grin. Wearing a Welsh cycling bucket hat and smiling for cameras, he became the emotional center of the day. The pictures spread quickly because they seemed effortless. There was no carefully rehearsed royal pose, only a young child visibly enjoying himself. His laughter and playful confidence softened the formality around him and transformed the appearance from a routine engagement into a family story. That joy also reflected well on William and Catherine. Their children appeared relaxed enough to talk, laugh, take selfies, and react naturally to the events around them. Prince George and Prince Louis were photographed looking seriously at the action, while William leaned toward Charlotte in a quiet, affectionate exchange. Louis was also seen talking with his sister. None of these moments was dramatic on its own, but together they created the impression of a family that remained connected despite the extraordinary public conditions surrounding them. The emotional conflict was clearest in Prince George. He looked happy to be present, but he also seemed more aware than his younger brother that the cameras never stopped. At his age, that awareness is understandable. He is not simply a teenager attending a sports event with his parents. He is a future king, and even ordinary family interactions can be treated as historical material. The source conversation described him as guarded, but not unhappy, someone who understood that all eyeballs are on you. That tension surfaced in a small but revealing exchange. Catherine joked that Olympic cycling champion Dame Laura Kenny had been trying to persuade her and William to ride together. Catherine laughed. "Be careful what you wish for because they want to put us on a tandem bike." When presenter Gethin Jones asked George, Charlotte, and Louis whether they wanted to see their parents riding a tandem together, George immediately answered, "No." William then delivered the perfect fatherly response: "We embarrass you enough as it is." The exchange worked because it sounded normal. George reacted exactly as many teenagers would react to the possibility of their parents making a spectacle of themselves. William answered with self-deprecating humor rather than royal stiffness. In that brief moment, the family did not look like symbols of an institution. They looked like parents and children teasing one another. But the normality was fragile. The Wales children can never be entirely ordinary because their public lives carry constitutional meaning. George, especially, is being introduced gradually to a future he did not choose. His appearances must be frequent enough to prepare him for public life, but limited enough to protect his childhood. William and Catherine therefore face an emotional and strategic balancing act. They must allow the public to see their children without allowing public curiosity to consume them. The Wales family's appearance also carried significance beyond charming photographs. The Commonwealth Games had been struggling for attention and relevance within an overcrowded international sporting calendar. Glasgow stepped in after the original Australian host withdrew because of cost concerns, and the event was smaller than previous editions. In that context, the attendance of the King, the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Edinburghs, Princess Anne, and the Wales children created valuable publicity. The emotional tone changed sharply when the discussion turned from the Wales family to Prince Harry and the next Invictus Games in Birmingham. According to the conversation, Harry is believed to want King Charles to stand beside him at the Games. One source was quoted as saying, "Next year is a big deal for Harry. He is determined that the Birmingham Games will be the best ever. It would mean the world to him to have his father there." That request creates a conflict far deeper than a simple family invitation. King Charles is Harry's father, but he is also the sovereign and the ceremonial head of the British Armed Forces. The Invictus Games were created to celebrate wounded, injured, and sick service personnel who rebuilt their lives through sport. From that perspective, the king's presence would honor the competitors, not merely Harry. The central question is therefore not whether Charles wishes to reward or forgive his son. It is whether his duty to the competitors should outweigh the risk that any appearance will be interpreted as an endorsement of Harry's conduct over the previous 6 years. This is where the emotional stakes become difficult. Many royal supporters believe Harry has repeatedly attacked the monarchy, criticized members of his family, and damaged trust. To them, standing beside him could look like surrender. The source discussion acknowledged that anger, but argued that monarchy has always required duty to come before personal feeling. The late Queen was used as the clearest example. Her life was defined by service, even when service demanded painful sacrifices from her family. King Charles now faces a similar, though very different test. If he attends, he risks allowing the event to become another chapter in the Sussex drama. If he stays away, the competitors may lose the honor of being welcomed by the king of the host nation. The strongest argument for attendance is that Harry should not be treated as the entire meaning of Invictus. He may be its most visible figure, but the Games belong morally to the veterans and service personnel who compete. They have endured injury, trauma, rehabilitation, and the difficult process of rebuilding identity after military life changed forever. Their stories should stand above the family conflict. This is why the commentary insisted that you actually got to move the soap opera and kick that into touch. The phrase captured the frustration surrounding Invictus. Every discussion about the Games now risks becoming a discussion about Harry, Meghan, security, reconciliation, or royal body language. The athletes are pushed into the background, while the family drama dominates the foreground. The solution proposed was not an emotional reunion, but a tightly managed appearance governed by clear rules. The king could attend, formally open or close the Games, greet competitors, and keep any interaction with Harry brief. One imagined version was simple. Harry introduces his father, hands him the microphone, and leaves the stage after a hug or a pat on the back. Such a moment would acknowledge the family connection without allowing it to consume the event. That lack of trust is part of Harry's deeper emotional conflict. His military service has often been described as one of the most meaningful periods of his life. Around veterans, he appears to recover a sense of purpose and belonging that is harder to find in other parts of his public career. Invictus is therefore not only a project or brand, it is one of the few remaining places where Harry can claim an identity grounded in service rather than grievance. The debate over security intensified that frustration. Harry has repeatedly raised concerns about the protection available to him and his family in Britain. In the source discussion, those concerns were dismissed in forceful language. The argument was that a major international sporting event involving military competitors, senior officials, and potentially members of the royal family would already require substantial security. Airports, racing events, major championships, and royal engagements routinely involve searches, controlled access, and detailed planning. From that viewpoint, Harry's demand for a special level of protection becomes another distraction. The commentator argued that he would receive appropriate security because of the event and his status, but not necessarily the dramatic motorcade or constant police presence he once had as a working royal. The emotional change in the conversation was obvious. What began as a reasoned debate about duty turned into visible irritation, with the speaker saying Harry needed to get a life and stop using security as an easy stick to bear. The unresolved question is whether Harry can accept an appearance designed around the institution rather than around reconciliation. If the king attends, Harry may hope the moment signals personal healing. Palace advisors may insist it signals nothing beyond duty. The public will still search for meaning in every glance. Lip readers, body language experts, and commentators will examine the footage frame by frame. The source conversation openly mocked that industry, calling such interpretations unreliable and often complete baloney. Yet everyone involved knows those stories will appear. This is the paradox of a royal reunion. The more carefully it is managed, the more intensely it will be analyzed. A brief handshake can be described as cold. A hug can be described as reconciliation. A smile can be interpreted as forgiveness, while a serious expression becomes evidence of hostility. The King and Harry may be able to control the schedule, but they cannot control the narrative once the cameras begin recording. The third story moved from royal duty to image rehabilitation. Meghan Markle's promotion of the documentary Cookie Queens was presented as another example of the struggle over public perception. She visited a Girl Scout camp in Ojai, California, took photographs and selfies with campers, and appeared alongside members of the documentary's team. Supportive coverage described her as effortlessly stylish and highlighted the warmth of the visit. The skeptical response was immediate. The commentators questioned whether the appearance was primarily about promoting the girls or repairing Meghan's reputation. After years of bullying allegations, staff disputes, and criticism of her treatment of relatives, an association with young Girl Scouts selling cookies could create a softer, more approachable image. In that reading, the visit was not simply promotion. It was an attempt to reintroduce Meghan as the warm, relatable girl next door. The emotional conflict here is between appearance and credibility. Public figures often support documentaries, charities, and youth organizations. There is nothing inherently suspicious about doing so. But Meghan's critics interpret almost every gesture through the history of previous contradictions. When she presents herself as nurturing, they remember accusations of difficult workplace behavior. When she talks about family, they remember her estrangement from her father. When she describes childhood food experiences, they compare different versions of her upbringing and search for inconsistencies. The source conversation returned repeatedly to one demand: "Call your dad, Meghan." That phrase condensed a much larger criticism. The commentators believed that no public display of compassion could feel convincing, while her private relationship with Thomas Markle remained unresolved. Whether that judgment is fair or not, it shows how personal history limits image repair. A celebrity can create new photographs, but cannot easily erase old emotional associations. That interpretation may be harsh, and the speakers briefly admitted the danger that Meghan is damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. If she avoids public events, she is accused of irrelevance. If she attends them, she is accused of exploiting the cause. If she promotes a project, critics call it desperation. If she remains silent, they say her career has stalled. This is the emotional trap of a polarized public image. Every action is processed as evidence for a conclusion people have already reached. That theme accidentally echoed the criticism directed at Meghan. The commentators portrayed her as attaching herself to a story about young girls, while also using the project to compete for attention. They questioned how deeply she had been involved in production, suggesting that she and Harry joined later, contributed money, and received executive producer credit. The visit to the camp was therefore interpreted as a promotional obligation rather than evidence of long-term commitment. The language became increasingly mocking. Meghan was described as desperately trying to be photographed, while footage of her walking through her Montecito garden was dismissed as another carefully staged image. The laughter and sarcasm revealed that the speakers no longer approached her actions neutrally. Their emotional position had hardened. Every new appearance was filtered through accumulated distrust. That distrust also explains why comparisons with Diana and Catherine remain so powerful. When Catherine interacts with children or appears with her family, supporters often see authenticity, continuity, and duty. When Meghan performs a visually similar act, critics see imitation and strategy. The behavior may look comparable in a photograph, but the surrounding narrative changes its meaning. This is not simply about who smiles more naturally. It is about the relationship between repetition and belief. Catherine's public image has been reinforced over years by repeated themes: family stability, patience, discretion, gradual service, and visible respect for royal boundaries. Meghan's image has been shaped by a different repeated vocabulary: conflict, contradiction, estrangement, ambition, control, and reinvention. Once those patterns become established, new events are absorbed into them. The most frequently repeated expressions in the source material reveal the structure of the entire discussion. Goldfish Bowl described the pressure surrounding the whale's children. Normal Family and Family Day Out emphasized William and Catherine's attempt to create ordinary experiences. Duty and Service Personnel defined the moral argument for King Charles attending Invictus. Soap opera, security, and distraction described the forces threatening to overshadow the athletes. Desperation, image, and look at me framed the criticism of Meghan. These repeated ideas should guide the future structure of any YouTube commentary based on this material. The whale section should repeatedly contrast normality with surveillance. The Harry section should contrast duty with personal betrayal. The Meghan section should contrast public compassion with private credibility. Repetition should not merely restate the same accusation. It should deepen the emotional pattern each time it returns. The principal keywords are family, duty, image, service, security, pressure, normality, attention, trust, and narrative. Together they explain why these stories belong in one episode. The whale's family represents an institution trying to make public duty look humane and emotionally stable. Harry represents a family member trying to reconnect with the institution through a cause that still gives him legitimacy. Meghan represents the battle to rebuild trust through carefully chosen public associations. The emotional movement of the episode begins with delight. Prince Louis smiles. George delivers a dry teenage no, and William jokes that the parents already embarrass their children enough. It then moves into tension as the future king's awareness of the cameras becomes clearer. From there, the tone becomes morally conflicted around Charles and Harry, before turning openly frustrated over security. Finally, it hardens into skepticism and ridicule during the discussion of Meghan. That progression is important for a YouTube audience. Beginning with warmth draws the viewer into the family story. The shift toward Harry introduces a larger question with real moral complexity. The Meghan section provides the strongest opinions and therefore the most controversial discussion. The ending must then rise above the individual personalities and explain what all three stories reveal. The lasting message is that royal life is now a battle over meaning as much as a performance of duty. A child's grin can strengthen an institution. A father's attendance at a sporting event can be interpreted as forgiveness, obligation, or political symbolism. A celebrity's visit to a youth camp can be seen as kindness by one audience and manipulation by another. For the main figures, the consequences will continue long after these particular headlines disappear. Prince George will grow increasingly conscious that every public appearance is preparation for kingship. Prince Louis may retain his spontaneous charm, but he too will eventually understand the limits of life inside the goldfish bowl. William and Catherine will have to protect their children while gradually presenting them to the country they may one day serve. King Charles will continue to face the conflict between fatherhood and sovereignty. Any decision involving Harry will be judged in both personal and constitutional terms. Attending Invictus may honor veterans but reopen family wounds. Refusing to attend may protect the monarchy from spectacle but appear to place private conflict above public service. Harry's future is equally tied to trust. Invictus remains one of his strongest achievements, but it can survive only if the athletes remain more important than the Sussex narrative. To protect the games, Harry may need to accept boundaries that feel personally painful. He may also need to understand that reconciliation cannot be demanded through a public event. Meghan's long-term challenge is credibility. Image rehabilitation cannot be achieved through one documentary, one camp visit, one garden video, or one carefully framed photograph. It requires consistency over time. The more frequently her public message conflicts with how critics understand her private relationships, the more every new appearance will be treated as strategy rather than sincerity. And that may be the most enduring impact of all. The modern royal story is no longer controlled by palaces, broadcasters, or newspaper editors alone. It is built through clips, screenshots, reaction channels, social media posts, lip-reading claims, memes, and repeated emotional keywords. Once a narrative takes hold, it can outlive the event that created it. Prince Louis can steal the show in a single afternoon. Prince Harry can spend a year trying to secure one meaningful appearance from his father. Meghan can spend months promoting a softer image. But the public does not judge each moment in isolation. It compares the moment with everything that came before. That is why trust remains the central issue. The Wales family currently benefits from a narrative of stability and gradual preparation. Harry faces a narrative of grievance mixed with genuine service. Meghan faces a narrative of reinvention shadowed by contradiction. Whether those narratives are completely fair is almost secondary. They are now the emotional framework through which millions of viewers interpret the royal family. The images from the Commonwealth Games will fade from the front pages. The debate over Charles and Invictus will move toward another decision point. Cookie queens will either find a larger audience or disappear into the crowded world of streaming content. Yet the conflicts underneath them will remain. Childhood versus public duty, fatherhood versus kingship, service versus spectacle, and compassion versus credibility. Those tensions are not temporary royal gossip. They are the forces shaping the monarchy's next generation and the Sussex's future place in public life. The lasting impact will be measured not by one photograph, one speech, or one reunion, but by which story the public continues to believe when the cameras return.